Thanks. Programmers are some of the smartest people in the world. So how come our software is usually late, always buggy, and hardly ever fun to use? Is it possible the software industry is inherently incompetent in ways that we just can't see? Start at the top. Do we hire our leaders based on competence? A riddle I heard in junior high school that's quite sexist went like this. A blonde and a brunette both applied for the same bank teller position. Which one got the job? Answer, the one with the biggest boobs. Now, the clear subtext was that women may be hired based on their body shape, unlike men. You might think a man got the job because of nepotism or because of the good old boy network, but nobody seriously believes that men are being given important leadership positions just because of their body shape. So how do we explain this? Very few men are 6'2" and taller. But in a sample of Fortune 500 CEOs, almost 30% were 6'2" or taller. Now, do you seriously think that human growth hormone is the key to leadership ability? Of course not. So that leaves us to face the awful truth that we are, in effect, my friends, being led by whoever has the biggest boobs. Forget about leaders. How do we hire programmers? You probably know the conventional wisdom. You hire the smartest people and you get out of their way. But psychology teaches us that's a good way to hire fixed mindset people. Fixed mindset people want to protect the appearance of being smart, so they avoid hard problems that they might fail at, like making software easy to use. They like easy problems that make them look smart, like making an animated dancing bear that tells you who wrote the software. The Secretary of the Navy once asked, how did a $500 million software project get years behind in the space of a single month? Part of the answer is we hire fixed mindset programmers who want to hide their mistakes instead of learning from them. Can we at least fire programmers competently? Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, a tall man, allowed rumors to run rampant before he announced his layoffs. Now, rumor psychologists have studied that exact situation, and you won't be surprised to learn that causes lowered productivity and increased stress. Ballmer used higher-ups to pick the names of the people who would be laid off. The people in the trenches had no input. So that inevitably led to cases where someone highly competent was being laid off and someone less competent was being kept. That sent the message that competence can't protect your job, raising stress levels more. Finally, Ballmer only announced some of the names of the people to be laid off. He left a long list of to-be-announced names of people who'll be laid off later in the year, raising stress levels even more. Now, psychiatrist J. Douglas Bremner has written a book called Does Stress Damage the Brain? And the answer is, yes, stress damages the brain. So CEO Steve Ballmer, a tall man, is literally inflicting brain damage on the people who are trying to write the next version of Windows. Now, I can't wait to install that hot mess on my PC. How about you? How can you tell if you're an incompetent programmer? If you turn your monitor off and you can still see a burned-in image of your debugger, then you might be an incompetent programmer. If the bug database ran out of disk space a month after they hired you, then you might be an incompetent programmer. If your car blows up and the police suspect the entire tech support department, then you might be an incompetent programmer. One last story. A man named Wheeler went out and robbed 2 banks in Pittsburgh. He wore no mask. He wore no disguise. He made no attempt to hide his face from the security cameras. When police easily apprehended him, they discovered he was laboring under the misconception that by painting his face with lemon juice, he had rendered it invisible to videotape. Wheeler was an incompetent robber, but did he realize how incompetent he was? 2 Cornell psychologists featured Wheeler in a paper they wrote that asked this important and subtle question. If you are incompetent, does that very incompetence keep you from realizing that you're incompetent? Because if you cannot realize that you are incompetent, then why would you ever take any steps to become competent? And that brings me to one final depressing thought. If you strongly believe that you are a competent programmer, then you might be an incompetent programmer. Thank you.